This is Joanna Lilly. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Since its inception in 1949, Mental Health Awareness Month has been a cornerstone in addressing the challenges faced by millions of Americans living with mental health conditions. Although this month of recognition has been in existence for a while, stigmatization around mental health still exists. Throughout the month of May, we are bringing you episodes from the parent perspective to highlight this special month. Welcome to the Parent Series, brought to you by Success is Subjective.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilly.
David is the parent of a preteen daughter whose acute social and family anxiety led to escalating dangerous behaviors. Her treatment journey included wilderness therapy and a therapeutic boarding school with strong transition support after. After 13 months of treatment, David's daughter graduated and now attends a mainstream boarding school in easy driving distance from home. Her work and David's work continue, but she is in a staggeringly more healthy place than was imaginable 2 years ago. My conversation with David is full of insights from his personal journey as a man, a father, and a husband, and practical advice for making the most you can from intensive care. Here's David. Well, David, thank you again for being a guest on the Parent Series of the Success is Subjective podcast. If you're okay with us just jumping right in, can you share a little backstory on what was going on with your child prior to entering treatment?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. Thank you for doing the podcast and especially the series with parents. It's so important to have the voice of parents. I cannot tell you how many professionals we've had in our lives, and we've gotten equal value from just talking to other sort of fellow travelers on this journey. So it's deeply appreciated. So our journey, I can tell you, I'm not even sure I knew I was on a journey for most of the journey. I think what we were experiencing was a confusing series of, experiences with our daughter, who on one hand, the behaviors just seemed like normal behaviors, but extreme. And it was really hard to tell what we called sort of normal teenager or pre-teenager behavior, because she was actually a preteen for most of this, and what was something other. And so we just kept trying to focus on the normal their normal stuff like therapy and talking to her and boundaries and all that stuff. And so the journey was just, I would say it was just confusing and very frustrating, but we lacked that sort of awareness of the big picture that we were involved with until the end, I would say, the last few months.
Wow. And that paints I like how you started off talking about that. We didn't even realize we were on a journey. So sometimes it's kind of that, like, it almost gives the perception of tunnel vision because we are so focused on what is immediately in front of us, not realizing, if you take that step back or if you're at that 10,000 foot view, you can actually have a very different perspective, which to your point, you would have realized, hey, maybe we're actually on a journey.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I think we realized that we were really on a journey when we did exactly what you said, when we tried to zoom in and zoom out, like look at each individual sort of behavior or experience that we had, and then pull back and look at it in the context of childhood and parenthood and familyhood. And finally, we wrote a list where we just took out a piece of paper and literally a blue pen and just wrote everything that we had been going through over the last couple months. Every episode that terrified us, every moment we thought maybe we should go to the hospital, every moment where I wondered if my daughter was alive or whatever we experienced. And suddenly we're like, oh my God. Like, that's just a few months. It was so clarifying and terrifying, but clarifying in that moment to just see the totality of that list and realize, okay, there's no way this is just sort of more normal like extra normal. This is like extraordinary. And that's, I think, when we realized I don't think we knew the term journey at that point. We certainly are comfortable with it now, but I think at that point we realized there was something different here than we realized.
Yeah. So you kind of alluded to some of those feelings maybe that you were kind of experiencing even just during that, like writing the list piece, but can you just share maybe some of the other feelings that you felt during this time period when your daughter was struggling? And the reason why I ask really quickly is because we kind of, we started this, right? Like sometimes parents, we seek solidarity in other people that are having similar experiences, but there's still a lot of stigma around not just getting help for ourselves, but getting help for our children. And so a part of that too is just having some emotional awareness of what am I actually feeling right now? So as a parent, can you share just some of those feelings that you had?
Yeah. And I'll say there's sort of I'm going to use the list as sort of a turning point. It wasn't just the list. There were other things that all sort of happened around the same point or the same moment in time. Before that, there was a real part of me that was just angry and bewildered and did not understand why my daughter was behaving the way she was behaving. I'm a good dad. My wife is a great mom. We provide for our kids. We are present in our kids' lives. We have family dinner. All of those things that, we knew her teachers, like all those things that we're supposed to know about, all the things that say you are a good parent, we were doing them to the best of our ability. Not perfectly, of course, but like doing the best we could. And it was incredibly hard to be a good parent. Like it just felt like I could not understand why my parenting wasn't working, so to speak. And I was here. So I was angry. I was frustrated. I think a lot of the issues we were dealing with, I was torn between thinking this is just a spoiled, manipulative kid. And is there something else going on here? Right. And it was confusing, sad, like all of those things. And then when we committed to treatment, like not just therapy, but going away, wilderness therapy, and our daughter went there was this whole other issue that came flooding in, which is privacy, right? That as much as I had questions and I wanted community, I'm also a private guy. And this is my daughter's life we're talking about here. I did not want to be out there in any way that might sort of out her and the issues that she was dealing with. That was her story and her private life that I wanted her to be able to define and live. And I didn't want her as a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old for me to have defined how people look at her for the rest of her life. And so I was like, I can't even tell you, even in private message groups where everybody has to be recommended by someone else in treatment, I still never posted a thing because I just was worried. Obviously that changed later, but like in that moment, it was a year, more than a year.
Wow.
Being totally silent and just having it all inside me and my family and between me and my therapist. And yeah, it was hard. But I mean, that keeps us quiet. It's our kid. She was in pain and she was scared and she was working so hard to feel better and to be better. If there was anything I could do to help her, I was going to do that, including not doing things like posting on a Facebook group for other parents. Like I just took it to, as far as I could take it.
Well, and I think that is quite the internal conflict in terms of the range of emotions, right? From like how you're feeling about your child to the experiences that you have questioning your parenting to then also thinking very specifically and intentionally, like being worried, fearful, private around making sure that even though this is also a part, the treatment experience is also a part of you because by proxy, you're the parent, but realistically, like putting your daughter and her experience at the forefront of like, this is her story to tell. This is her, like her information to share or choose not to share. It's not my place. And so that can be obviously an internal conflict to kind of process or wrestle with almost on a daily basis. You also kind of alluded to at some point something changed, right? From going really private.
Yeah.
So I want to ask about that.
Oh my gosh.
I also really want to ask about, how you knew it was time for something like a wilderness therapy program. So let's table.
Let me do that first.
Okay.
Yeah, or whatever, whichever. All right. So I started talking about that moment where we wrote the list. And the reason we wrote the list was because there was just a flood of really hard moments between my daughter, me and my wife, and our son, and other people. And we realized that she was just way out of control. She was way out of control. And we just kept thinking, it's not as bad. She's saying things that aren't real. Or she's doing things as a communication mechanism, as though doing things as a communication mechanism somehow means that she's not doing them, or they're not as serious as if she intended to do them. Like, no, it's all communication in some form. And we just suddenly were like, oh my God, like we could lose this kid. Like, I don't know what to do anymore. And my wife and I have always been really good communicators with each other, very much on the same page. And we really believe that there are people in this world who are experts. And when you are out of your depth, you get an expert. And we thought our daughter's therapist was outstanding, even though we were in crisis, which really is outstanding. So thank God for having a good team when you're dealing with this kind of stuff. She recommended an education consultant who we reached out to. And we had, I remember, we traded email with her. We scheduled a conversation. Our kids were away at sleepaway camp when this was all coming to a head. We had just dropped our daughter off at sleepaway camp. And we pulled off to the side of the road when we were driving to Asheville, North Carolina from New York City on vacation. And we spent the night near Gettysburg, I think. And we pulled off the side of the road to do this conversation with the ed consultant. And within 30 minutes, we were just like, we're going to hire you. We didn't talk to more people. We were suddenly in solution mode. We talked to her therapist. We got a recommendation. We talked to that person. We felt really good about them. We hired them on the spot, literally sitting in the front seat of our car. And within 2 days over the 4th of July weekend and from Asheville, North Carolina, we were interviewing wilderness therapy programs because we were just like, this kid's not going to make it at sleepaway camp. She's already cratering there. We have to act now. And that was it. And we just kept acting. We just kept moving as quickly as we could because we were in crisis. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the only way through is through. And so we went through.
How was that experience for your child, knowing very quickly, hey, we're solution focused, right? We've got to make a decision, right? At some point you said we're interviewing programs. You made a selection at some point, right? This is the place, this is the therapist. So if you feel comfortable talking about that process, but then also more importantly, just how was that wilderness experience for your child?
Our daughter was away at sleepaway camp. We had dropped her off maybe a week before. So you can imagine part of our thinking was if we can just get our daughter to sleepaway camp, we'll get her out of the city, away from her parents, off social media, away from people, all those stressor behaviors and dangerous opportunities. She's going to be in a cabin with girls that she's known since she was 8. That'll be awesome. But over the first couple of days there, the reports we were getting back from camp is that she was still in real crisis. The camp was pretty much calling us every day or two saying, she said this thing and we want to make sure that you are aware or something, right? So she did not know we were doing this at all. when we got all of our ducks in a row and arranged for transport to take her there, because we just didn't believe we could do it ourselves. And my wife was really insistent on that more than me, and she was 100% correct. When we had all of our ducks in a row, we went to camp, we brought her home, and the transport people came that overnight. Like, she wasn't home for 6 hours. And it was some of the scariest 6 hours of my life, wondering if we were going to be able to navigate it until she could be safely taken away. I mean, she didn't go to Wilderness easily. It was a very difficult transport. And I can only imagine how terrifying it must be for any kid going through it. On one hand, you were woken up in the middle of the night and there's strangers there, and your parents are following a script telling you that these people are taking you someplace where you can be well and all that stuff. And on the other hand, you are a 12, 13, 14, 15, whatever kid who suddenly is just like, what is happening to me? And even if you secretly, deep in your soul, want help, it's just like the demons that you've been wrestling with are going to fight it. And so I think the most traumatic part of this whole experience with our daughter for her was transport, I'm sure. We still don't really talk about it. It was bad. It was really bad. I'll tell you, parents out there, if you are listening, transport was absolutely the best decision we ever made. And it was horrible for your kid. It is sometimes the best you can do still sucks. And you still have to do it. And I am telling you, I'm speaking to you right now, and I am tearing up, and it's been 2 years. And I'm thrilled we did it. The people who helped us were angels, and they saved us.
Thank you for being honest about that part, because obviously transport tends to get a lot of spotlight for being a traumatic experience. And there's so much vulnerability as a parent if that's the choice that you have to make. And like you said, even like your wife was 100% on board, like that has to happen because we can't do it. And you as the other parent saying, I feel really nervous or really uncomfortable. No,
you got to commit. You got to commit. And I will even say that by the time they showed up at our house, I was way past any reservations I had. I was way past that. That said, like, everything about the decision to go to Wilderness, the fact that you're doing it, where you're doing it, how you're making these decisions, how you're getting your kid there, it is so much easier when you and your spouse, if the spouse is in the picture, are on the same page, or can at least respect each other enough to compromise when necessary and then present a united front. I look at the parents who I've met on this journey who were not on the same page, and I feel so much for them. The fact that you are also negotiating with your spouse and compromising on things that you really feel very strongly about, it's so hard. It's so hard. And it was really hard for us.
Yeah.
But you have to do it. When it's the right thing to do, just remember you are saving your kid's life.
Yeah. So from your daughter's Wilderness experience, you said, hey, we don't actually talk about the transport. Do you talk about the Wilderness experience at all?
We talk about Wilderness. We talk about therapeutic boarding school. We have had a lot of family therapy. My wife and I have thrown ourselves into the work to be able to be better parents for what our kid needs, right? I sometimes talk about it in the sense that I was objectively a great parent for the fat part of the bell curve when it comes to parenting, but my kid is not an average. She's an individual, and that individual had things that I just wasn't attuned to, and they were really significant, and I had to do a lot of learning, and I'm thrilled that I did it, but I had to do that to show her that I was on the journey with her and to help her be successful when she was through with therapy and in therapy. And I'm thrilled that I did. But your question was really about like the experience.
Yeah.
Our daughter, it was like there were two kids. there was the angry, hyper anxious kid whose mind was just a seething cauldron of like uncertainty and anxiousness and fear and, insecurity and all those things. And there was a kid who knew this shouldn't be her life, that there was a better version of herself that could exist instead. And so we're very fortunate as a family. Our daughter threw herself into the work. Within a few weeks of getting to Wilderness, she was committed to the work. And it didn't mean she was instantly better, but it meant that she was instantly moving in the right direction, piece by piece, with the help of an amazing program and an incredible primary therapist and the support of her parents from a distance who were also throwing themselves into the work. I cannot tell you, do the work yourselves, parents.
Yeah.
Because there is even if all you are doing is showing your kid that you're there for them by doing the investing in yourself too, that is good. That is really helpful. And chances are you will also find ways to be better as an individual and better as a parent than you were before. So just do it.
You're talking about two separate things, which is pretty awesome. One, which is just like the idea of what looks successful, quote unquote, or change, getting better, however you want to describe it. It comes when the entire family unit is willing to participate, not just that young person. And so you're really speaking to that, like, hey, if we're investing in our kid, if it got that extreme, we also have to hold the mirror up for ourselves and say, what can I learn while they're physically out of the house and they're literally 24/7 in a treatment experience? What can I also be doing? Not just as an individual parent, as a parenting unit, for siblings, as the entire family. I mean, all of these different dynamics that play out. You're also talking about what I'm hearing, and you correct me if I'm wrong, it's also about leaning into the resources that exist. What is the program offering? What are they additionally suggesting? Like, do they tell you to read some books or listen to podcasts? So actually, I want to pause there and just ask you as a parent, what did you specifically access in terms of resources, whether it was through the programs or outside of the programs, that you want to just kind of highlight to speak to for other parents that might be listening that are kind of curious, like what is out there for me to be doing?
Yeah, such an important question and such an important issue. Our philosophy was that sending our kid to Wilderness was critical, essential, and insufficient. Because you can't just send your kid off and have them come back to you cleaned up, ready to go, the perfect kid to be parented by you. Like, that's not what's going to happen. It is like Wilderness is just the start of helping your kid be better. And it is still a parent's responsibility to parent that kid into adulthood and set them up to be their best, happiest, most satisfied self. And so we, as her parents and as a family, did not want there to be any possible task, work, activity undone that might have had even an incrementally tiny extra push to help her on that path. And so what we did is, one, we chose a program, a Wilderness program, that had a very strong family component and parent component, right? You're sending the kid is in the Wilderness, you are all in the program. And at least that's the best way, I think. I'm not an expert, but I think the best way to do it is you have to all be committed to the work. The second, so what was that? We had books to read. We had podcasts to listen to. We had exercises to do. We had weekly meetings with the primary therapist. There were support groups. We joined all the support groups. We each went into our own therapy, although I took a little while to find someone I was really comfortable with. It took me a few months, actually, but we all went into our own therapy. Even our daughter's younger brother, our son, went into therapy because, frankly, he was living in a totally dysfunctional house. It was terrifying for him, I'm sure, at times. So we did everything. And then when there was a workshop for parents, we went to the workshop. That meant we took a couple of days off from work and we flew from New York City to Asheville, North Carolina. We stayed in a cheap motel and we did the homework beforehand. We did the work, and then we took the late night flight 2 days later back home to New York. And I can tell you, it was really helpful to have a job that was understanding that I needed to take some random days off. So that was helpful. Not everyone is so fortunate, and not everyone has the money to invest that way. I know that's also a really huge deal. And trust me, we were very fortunate when it came to being able to get our hands on resources, but we did it all. Like, we did everything that was recommended to us. And it doesn't mean we lived everything, but we explored everything. We tried it on. We debated it. We lived it. And then we figured out how to make it work for our family.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's the other thing too, kind of like you described your parenting on the bell curve, right? I don't think that every resource that is out there is appropriate for every parent. Like you said, every family unit is different. Every young person that is kind of seen as the priority family member that needs support is unique, and what it is that they need or who they need or where that resource is also different. And so really, yes, there's a large menu of options in terms of resources, but I think it really comes down to, like you said, try it on, see if it works. If it doesn't, then keep looking. I mean, similar to what you said, it took me a couple months to find my own like individual therapist that I really liked. That's fantastic, because most of the time, honestly, finding your own individual therapist that's a fit is not as simple as, hey, I contacted this person, we're a match straight from the jump, and we're going to start therapy next week. It's a little, it takes time. You got to find that person. So you got to do your process.
You got to do your process. And also, you're probably in a terribly vulnerable moment.
Yes.
When you're doing all this stuff, you're probably exhausted and living in your own fear. And so it is a really hard moment. And I'm telling you, as I'm speaking to other parents out there, do it. Just find that reserve. It is harder than anything, and you need to just do it. I'm not saying this because I'm on the other side and I look back as though it was easy. I remember how hard it was.
Yeah.
I will never forget how I felt the night my daughter left my house with that transport people, or the calls from her trip down, the 48-hour trip from New York to North Carolina, or the things she said to us in her letters in the beginning. I will never forget that. And I still did the work, and I'm so happy I did.
Yeah. That's kind of the true definition of forgiveness. Honestly, you don't have to forget, but there is a need for forgiveness. And that's where growth and healing comes into play. I'm going to ask one more question before we kind of wrap up. And I talk about this outside of this parent series. The Success is Subjective podcast really is trying to highlight and destigmatize that, realistically, we're all on our own journeys, whether or not you've been in treatment, but that success can be a different vision for all of us. And so as a parent, right, when you were kind of raising your daughter before it really started to come to a head with a lot of her behaviors, and to that place where you had to make the drastic decision of, we have to work with this consultant, we have to, go this treatment, not just to a wilderness program, but like you said, this journey, then followed by a therapeutic boarding school. I'm just curious from your perspective, how your image of what success looks like for your daughter has shifted, and also maybe what that looks like for herself.
So I would say my long-term vision of success for my daughter is totally unchanged, actually. I think she is an amazing human being, and she can do anything. Her life can be incredibly rich in every meaning of that, like emotionally, spiritually, community, if she wants, financially, like she can do it. The path, I just have so much more empathy and understanding of where she is day to day, week to week, than I did before. And that is profoundly different. The way I react to her, the way I listen to her, like really listen and understand, that is completely different than it was. And I think we have such a better relationship now by like thousands of percents than it was before. But I always knew she was amazing, and nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
I love that. David, thank you for taking the time to share a brief snippet of your journey. I'm going to keep using that word because that is what this has been, and you're still on it. Thank you. Thank you again for taking the time to share your story of your experience as a parent with a child through the treatment journey.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guests for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. Put a face with a voice by accessing their interview on the newly formed successissubjective.org website. If you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email Joanna at joanna@successissubjective.org. Be sure to check out the collegealternative.org and lilyconsulting.com websites for additional resources outside of podcasting. If you are listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe to the show. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Last but not least, Success is Subjective is listener supported, made possible by our team and by you. You can support this podcast by joining the Patreon community at patreon.com/successissubjective. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. While information is everywhere, how do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.